The wind in Elyria carried secrets like a thief carried lockpicks, discreetly, but always ready to pick at the edges of reality. Rumi Riddle had been in the city for less than a day, and already she could feel the air tugging at her cloak, whispering hints of forgotten spells and buried grudges. Nurabad's golden glow was a distant memory now, replaced by Elyria's labyrinth of spires and fog-shrouded canals. The city floated on a bed of enchanted mist, its buildings tethered by vines that pulsed with faint blue light, as if the whole place might drift away if the magic ever faltered. She had arrived by a smuggling barge from the southern ports, hidden among crates of spiced silks and bottled dreams. The journey had been uneventful, save for Whisper's constant grumbling about the humidity. "My etchings are rusting," he'd complained. "Do you know how hard it is to maintain a shiny personality in this soup?" Rumi had ignored him, focusing on the horizon where Elyria first appeared. Like a mirage rising from the sea, its towers piercing the clouds. Now, leaning against a railing overlooking the Grand Canal, where gondolas glided silently, propelled by invisible currents, she took in the city's pulse. Vendors hawked wares from floating stalls, fresh illusions, half-price memories. Children with glowing eyes played games where they swapped shadows for fun. Whisper, her ever-complaining coin companion, rested in her palm, his etched surface catching the dim lantern light. "You know, Rumi," he said, his voice a metallic murmur, "after Nurabad, I thought we'd aim for somewhere with actual beaches, sand, sun, maybe a nice retirement fund. But no, you drag us to the floating swamp of the north. What's next, stealing fog?" Rumi smiled faintly, flipping him between her fingers. "Fog might be worth something if it's the right kind. Besides, we're not here for vacation. Word travels fast in thief circles. Elyria's got a problem that needs a specialist." Whisper groaned, "Another impossible heist? Haven't we had enough of those? Reflections, pumpkins, what's it this time? Stealing someone's bad mood?" She pocketed him before he could complain further. The truth was, she hadn't come to Elyria on a whim. A message had found her in Nurabad's night bazaar, a sealed envelope delivered by a raven with eyes like polished obsidian. The note inside was simple: "Steal the Shadow of Elyria. Payment, your weight in illusions. Meet at the drowned clock tower. L. Voss." Rumi didn't know Lyra Voss personally, but the name carried weight in the shadows of the world. Voss was tied to the city's shadowy elite, merchants of dreams, dealers in forgotten memories. Her family had built fortunes on trading intangibles, and if someone like that wanted a shadow stolen, it wasn't metaphorical. In a city built on magic, shadows had a habit of detaching themselves, wandering off to cause mischief or guard secrets. But why her, Rumi wondered, as she navigated the twisting streets. Her reputation as a thief for hire, specializing in the worthless, the impossible, had grown since the mirror heist. People like Lyra sought her out for jobs no one else would touch. Stealing a city's shadow? That fit the bill. The drowned clock tower loomed ahead, its face submerged halfway in the canal, ticking backwards as water lapped at its gears. Bubbles rose from the submerged bells, popping with faint chimes. Rumi slipped through the fog, her boots silent on the damp stone. She passed a group of fishermen casting lines into the mist, pulling up fish that glowed like lanterns. One glanced at her, his eyes narrowing, but she melted into the shadows. A figure waited in the archway, a woman in a cloak of shifting silk, her face half hidden by a veil of illusions that made her features blur and reform. One moment she looked young and sharp-featured, the next aged and weary. Magic like that wasn't cheap. It spoke of power. "Rumi Riddle," Lyra Voss said, "the thief who steals what can't be stolen. I've heard tales from Nurabad. The mirror maker sings your praises." "Tales exaggerate," Rumi replied, stepping into the light of a hovering lantern. "I fixed a problem. That's all. What's this shadow you want lifted? Not just any shadow, the Shadow of Elyria itself. It's the city's guardian spirit, born from the first enchantment that lifted us from the sea centuries ago. It protects us from storms, invaders, even our own follies. But it's been corrupted, twisted by outsiders. Rumi leaned against a pillar, crossing her arms. Cleverly. Their bureaucrats are everywhere these days, stamping magic like it's paperwork. Lyra nodded grimly, her veil shimmering. Exactly. They've infiltrated our councils, posing as advisors. They're not content with taxing magic anymore, they want to control it. They've bound the shadow with their seals, turning it into a spy. It watches everything, every deal, every spell cast in secret. My business suffers. The city's freedom hangs by a thread. If we don't act, Elyria will become another Cleverly outpost, all gray towers and red stamps. And you want me to steal it? A city's shadow isn't exactly pocket-sized. How do you even contain something like that? Lyra smiled thinly, her features stabilizing for a moment into a striking beauty with high cheekbones and a scar along her jaw. That's why I called you. You're the expert in impossibles. Steal it, bind it in a vessel of your choosing, and deliver it to me. I'll pay handsomely. Illusions that can be traded for gold, power, whatever you desire. Fail, and well, the shadow might steal you instead. It's consumed lesser thieves. Whisper vibrated in Rumi's palm, a silent warning of danger. But the challenge ignited something in her, the thrill of taking what shouldn't be taken, righting a wrong in the process. Cleverly had hounded her since the pumpkin heist. This was a chance to strike back. She extended her hand. Deal. But I work alone. No interference. Lyra shook it, her grip cold as canal water, sending a chill up Rumi's arm. You have 3 nights. After that, the shadow awakens fully under their control, and the city falls into their grasp. As Lyra vanished into the fog, her cloak blending with the mist until she was gone, Whisper popped out into Rumi's palm. Great! Stealing a sentient shadow. What could go wrong? Oh wait, everything. Did you feel that grip? She's not telling the full story. Rumi pocketed him again, starting back through the streets. No client ever does. That's why we dig. The night deepened, the fog thickening. Elyria's lanterns floated higher, casting eerie glows. Rumi found a small inn on the canal's edge, the sign of the floating fish, where the room swayed gently with the currents. She paid with a Nurabad trinket, a small vial of bottled laughter that made the innkeeper chuckle uncontrollably for minutes. In her room, she spread out her satchel's contents, lockpicks of enchanted bone, vials of illusions, the needle from Sham's shop that could pierce glass without shattering it. Whisper rolled across the table. Plan? First, research. We need to know what we're stealing.
Elyria wasn't a city you navigated. It navigated you. Streets shifted with the tides, bridges appeared and vanished like illusions, and the fog whispered directions that led astray more often than not. Rumi spent the first day mapping the Undercity, the network of tunnels and hidden docks where the real Elyria pulsed. She posed as a spice trader, her satchel filled with Nurabad trinkets, bottled echoes and shimmering sands to blend in. Locals eyed her curiously, but asked no questions. Outsiders were common in a city of secrets. Whisper served as her scout, rolling ahead into cracks and crevices, his glow faint enough not to draw eyes. Left here, he muttered through their mental link, a bond forged from years of adventures. No, wait, right. This place is a maze designed by a drunk cartographer. I just rolled into a puddle. Thanks for that. They emerged in the Whispering Market, a cavernous hall beneath the main plaza, where vendors hawked intangible goods, dreams in vials that promised sweet sleep, memories etched on glass shards that replayed lost moments, shadows bottled like ink for artists to paint with, darkness. The air hummed with negotiations, voices low to avoid the shadow's ears. Rumi lingered at a stall run by an old crone with eyes like storm clouds, her table laden with writhing shadows. "Shadows for sale?" Rumi asked casually, picking up a small vial where a tiny shadow danced like smoke. The crone cackled, revealing teeth stained with illusion ink. "All shadows have prices, girl. Small ones for hiding, big ones for power. But the big one, the Shadow of Elyria, that's not for buying, it's for fearing. It sees all, knows all, now that those gray coats have bound it." Rumi slid a silver rupee across the counter, letting it glint in the lantern light. "Tell me about it. How did it get bound?" The crone pocketed the coin with a gnarled hand. "Born from the city's founding spell, when the first mages lifted us from the drowning sea. It was our guardian, swallowing storms and spies. But Cleverly came with their papers and seals, promising regulation for safety. Fools in the council agreed. Now it's hungry, eats lesser shadows, grows stronger under their control. Whispers say it reports to them daily, feeding on our secrets." "Where does it rest, if one wanted to admire it?" The crone leaned in, breath smelling of herbs and decay. "In the heart of mist, beneath the grand spire. But to get there, you'd pass guardians, illusions thicker than this fog, golems of mist in memory. And even if you reached it, the seals are unbreakable without the right tool. A needle woven from shadow thread, perhaps. But only the weaver has those." Rumi nodded thanks and slipped away, weaving through the crowd. A young urchin bumped into her, deliberately, she realized, as she felt a note slipped into her pocket. She didn't react, continuing until she was in a quiet alcove. The note read, "I know what you seek. Meet at the broken bridge. Kale." Whisper buzzed. "Trap?" "Probably, but information is worth the risk." The broken bridge was a relic, half collapsed over a narrow canal, frequented by smugglers. Kale was a boy of 12, with messy hair and eyes that glowed faintly, a sign of shadow touch, common in Elyria's poor. "You the thief from Nurabad?" he asked, perching on a stone. Rumi nodded. "And you're?" "Kale. I heard you talking. My ma worked for Lyra Voss, says she's not to be trusted, wants the shadow gone to take over the councils herself." Rumi's eyes narrowed. "Proof?" Kale shrugged. "Overheard her talking to Cleverly men. They're in cahoots. She pays them to bind it tighter, then hires you to steal it, causing chaos she can exploit." "Why tell me?" "Shadow took my sister's shadow last month. She's fading without it. Help me get it back, and I'll show you a secret way to the heart." Rumi considered. Allies were rare, but kids like Kale had eyes everywhere. "Deal. Lead on." Kale guided her to a hidden tunnel behind the bridge, where they retrieved a small shadow jar from a Cleverly outpost, A quick in and out, with Rumi distracting guards while Kale snuck in. His sister, a pale girl named Mira, revived as the shadow returned. "Good deed done," Whisper said sarcastically. "Now the real job." That night, as the city dimmed, Rumi descended into the tunnels with Kale's map. The air grew thick, laced with the scent of salt and enchantment. Whisper illuminated faint runes on the walls, warnings in ancient tongues about the shadow's wrath. "Something's following us," he whispered. Rumi froze. A chill crept up her spine, not from the damp, but from the sense of being watched. She spun, but saw only fog. Then, from the shadows, a tendril emerged, dark, writhing like ink in water. The shadow's scout. "Run!" Whisper yelped. Rumi dashed through the tunnels, the tendril pursuing, whispering taunts in a voice like crumbling leaves. "Thief, you cannot steal what owns you. Your secrets are mine." She hurled a vial of bottled light from her satchel, shattering it against the wall. The explosion blinded the tendril, buying her time to escape to the surface. Panting on a bridge, she glared at Whisper. "It's smarter than I thought, and Kale was right. Lyra's playing both sides." "No kidding, and it's just a piece. The whole thing could swallow the city." Rumi's jaw set. "Then we'll need more help. Time to find the Shadow Weaver."
Elyria's underbelly had its kings and queens, but none as elusive as Malik the Shadow Weaver. Rumored to weave shadows into cloaks that rendered wearers invisible, he dwelled in the Forgotten Ward, a district where the fog was so dense it felt alive, and buildings leaned as if whispering to each other. Rumi navigated there by following Kale's tips, dodging patrols of Claverley inspectors, stiff-backed men in gray uniforms, wands at their hips like typewriters ready to stamp reality. One stopped her, demanding papers. "Purpose in Elyria." "Trading," she said, showing a fake permit from her satchel. He stamped it with a red seal, eyeing her suspiciously. "Watch your steps. The shadow sees all." She nodded and moved on, heart pounding. The Weaver's lair was a tent of woven darkness, suspended over a chasm that dropped into endless mist. Guards of shadow loomed at the entrance, but they parted as Rumi approached, as if sensing her intent. "Enter, thief," a voice rasped from within. Inside, Malik sat cross-legged amid looms of shadow thread, the air humming with the soft whir of spinning wheels. He was ancient, skin like weathered bark, eyes glowing faintly purple. Threads of darkness danced around him, forming shapes, birds, swords, faces that vanished as quickly as they appeared. "You seek to steal the unstealable," he said without preamble, not looking up from his work. "The Shadow of Elyria. Bold even for you, Rumi Riddle." Rumi sat opposite him on a cushion of compressed fog. "You've heard of me. The shadows talk. Norabad's mirrors still echo your name. But why come to me? You wove its first threads. I need to know how to unbind Claverley seals." Malik chuckled, a sound like rustling silk. "I did indeed. Centuries ago, when Elyria rose, I spun the shadow from the sea's darkness and the sky's light. It was pure then, a protector. Now Claverley have rebound it with bureaucratic chains, seals that tax its essence, force it to report every whisper in the city. To unbind it, you need more than skill. You need understanding. Can you help me?" Malik's eyes narrowed, his fingers pausing on the loom. "For a price. My daughter, Ilara, lost her shadow to the inspectors as collateral for unpaid magical dues. It's held in the tax vault. Return it, and I'll give you the key. A needle that pierces 7 seals without breaking them, woven from the shadow's own thread. Whisper vibrated warningly in her pocket, but Rumi nodded. Where's the vault? What guards it? Malik sketched a map on a scrap of shadow cloth which faded after she memorized it. Under the ministry outpost in the upper ward, guarded by illusions of paperwork hells and golems of ink. Be careful, the vault feeds on doubt. If you hesitate, it claims you. She rose. Consider it done. The vault was a fortress of stone and spell, perched on Elyria's edge, its walls etched with ledgers that scrolled endlessly. Rumi approached under cover of night, using a shadow cloak lent by Malik. Thin as mist, it bent light around her, making her a ghost in the fog. She scaled the wall using hooks of enchanted vine, slipping past a patrol. Inside, corridors twisted like a bureaucrat's logic, walls lined with filing cabinets that chattered softly, debating taxes. Golems of ink and paper patrolled, their bodies shifting from humanoid to swirling documents, eyes scanning for intruders. Rumi slipped past one, holding her breath as it passed inches away. Whisper scouted the lock on the main door. "Riddle lock," he whispered. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" Rumi smirked. "Echo." The door clicked open, revealing the vault. A chamber of shells lined with jars glowing faintly, captured shadows writhing inside like trapped smoke. Labels read like indictments: delinquent dream tax, unpaid illusion fee. She scanned until she found Ilara Malik, shadow tax delinquent. As she grabbed it, a golem materialized behind her. "Intruder!" it boomed, ink tentacles lashing out. Rumi dodged, the jar tucked under her arm. She hurled a vial of Norabad sand, which expanded into an illusionary dune, burying the golem temporarily. More came, the room filling with paper storms, forms that tried to wrap around her, turning her movements to bureaucratic sluggishness. "Left!" Whisper shouted as she ran. She leapt over a desk, shattering jars to release chaos. Shadows erupted, attacking the golems, creating a melee of darkness and ink. One shadow merged with a golem, turning it against its fellows. Rumi burst through a window, landing in the canal below, the jar clutched tight. She swam to shore, dripping but triumphant. Back at Malik's, she handed over the shadow. It flowed into a waiting loom, reforming into a young woman's silhouette that danced joyfully before fading into the air, presumably returning to Ilara. Malik nodded approval, his purple eyes softening. "Well done, thief. You've a knack for liberation." He presented a slender tool of blackened silver, the needle. "This will pierce the 7 seals, but beware. Each seal unleashes a guardian illusion, drawn from the binder's fears. Face them or be consumed." Rumi pocketed it. "Illusions I can handle. I've lived with worse." As she left, Malik called, "Thief, why do you steal such things? Power? Gold? Or is it the thrill of defying the owners?" She paused at the tent flap. "Because some things shouldn't be owned, not by cities, not by bureaucrats. Shadows, reflections, pumpkins, they belong to the world." Whisper chuckled softly from her pocket. "Poetic, but let's not get eaten by a shadow before we philosophize more." Rumi smiled and stepped into the fog, the needle a cool weight against her skin. The heart of mist pulsed beneath the grand spire, the city's tallest tower, a needle of glass and vine piercing the sky. The entrance was a hidden well in the central plaza, disguised as a fountain where water flowed upward in defiance of gravity. Rumi descended at midnight, the city's fog thickening as if to hide her path or warn her away. Kale had provided a rope of woven mist, strong yet lightweight, and Whisper's light pierced the gloom, revealing walls etched with the city's history. Murals of Elyria rising from the sea, mages casting spells, shadows weaving protection against ancient storms. The descent was long, the air growing colder, heavier with the scent of ancient magic. Droplets condensed on her cloak, and echoes of distant whispers bounced off the walls, fragments of the shadow's thoughts, perhaps. At the bottom, a vast chamber opened, the floor a pool of swirling mist that lapped at her boots like a living sea. In the center floated the Shadow of Elyria, a colossal entity of darkness, shaped vaguely like a winged serpent, its scales shifting patterns of stars and voids. It was bound by 7 glowing seals, claverly emblems pulsing red, chains of light wrapping its form, causing it to twitch in restrained agony. "Here we go," Rumi whispered, gripping the needle. She approached stealthily, wading through the mist that tugged at her legs like hands. The first seal was low, on the shadow's tail, a disk of red light etched with bureaucratic runes. Seal of oversight. She pierced it with the needle, a flash of crimson, and the seal shattered like glass, shards dissolving into the mist. Instantly, an illusion manifested, a swarm of spectral bureaucrats, clad in gray robes, quills scratching accusations on endless scrolls. "Intruder! Tax evasion! Magical misdemeanor! Pay your dues or face audit!" They surged toward her, ink from their quills shooting like arrows, solidifying into chains that sought to bind her. Rumi dodged, the chains clanging against the floor. One wrapped her ankle, pulling her down. She slashed with the needle, severing it, but more came. "Use me!" Whisper shouted. She hurled him like a boomerang. He spun glowing brightly, disrupting the illusions where he passed. The bureaucrats flickered, their forms glitching as if poorly copied documents. "Take that, paper pushers!" Whisper taunted. Rumi leapt, piercing another illusion's heart. It burst into confetti. The swarm dissipated, leaving only echoes of stamping feet. Breathing heavy, she moved to the second seal, on a wing. Seal of compliance. Pierce, shatter. This time, a labyrinth illusion enveloped her, walls of fog rising endlessly, shifting with every step. Paths branched into infinity, mirrors reflecting false versions of herself. Rumi succeeding, Rumi failing, Rumi trapped forever. "Left, no, right?" Whisper guided from her hand, but the maze twisted his words into echoes. Rumi closed her eyes, relying on instinct honed from years of heists. She felt the air currents, the subtle pull of the real chamber beyond the illusion. Ignoring the false paths, she dashed forward, hand outstretched, through a false wall that rippled like water. The labyrinth crumbled, mist falling like rain. Third seal, seal of memory. Pierce, shatter. This time, a guardian of forgotten memories assaulted her, manifesting as visions projected into her mind. Past heists gone wrong, the Claverley vault where she'd stolen the pumpkin but lost a friend to guards, doubts creeping in like vines. "You failed before," it whispered, voice her own. "The pumpkin was a diversion. They'll catch you. Give up." She shook it off, grounding herself with Whisper's voice. "Ignore it. You're the best thief alive, annoyingly so." She focused on the needle, piercing the vision's core. Gone. Fourth, seal of deluge. A torrent of illusory water flooded the chamber, waves crashing, pulling her under. She swam through it, realizing it was thickened mist, her lungs burning from the illusion of drowning. Gasping, she reached the seal mid-stroke, pierced it. The water evaporated. Fifth, seal of regret. Shadows of her own past materialized, lost loves from wandering days, abandoned homes in distant lands, a mentor who taught her the art of impossible thefts but died in a botched job. They pleaded, accused. "You left us. You're alone because you choose it." Whisper talked her through it. "They're not real, Rumi. I'm real, and I'm not going anywhere, unfortunately for you." She pierced each figure, watching them fade with a pang, but resolute. Sixth, seal of enforcement. Claverley's elite guards appeared, wands firing bureaucratic bolts that turned whatever they hit to paperwork, stone to ledgers, mist to forms. One grazed his sleeve, transforming it to a crumpled tax document. She ripped it off, using the needle to parry bolts, reflecting them back. The guards turned on each other in confusion, dissolving. Now the seventh, the core, on the shadow's heart. Seal of dominion. As she approached, the entity stirred, its massive eyes opening like voids, sucking in light. "Thief," it rumbled, voice echoing through her bones, shaking the chamber. "Why disturb my slumber? I am bound, but I am power." "You're not slumbering," Rumi said firmly, despite the fear clawing at her. "You're chained, corrupted. Let me free you." The shadow laughed, a gale of wind that almost knocked her back. "Freedom? I am the city. Steal me, and Elyria falls into the sea from whence it came."
The shadow roared, unbound, its form expanding to fill the chamber, wings unfurling to blot out the murals. Mist churned into a violent storm, winds howling as remnants of illusions shattered like glass. Rumi clung to a protruding root from the wall, whisper tucked safely in her fist to avoid being swept away. "You fool!" the shadow bellowed, its voice a thunderclap. "Without bonds, I am chaos. The seas will claim Elyria." But as the red glow of the seals faded completely, the corruption lifted like a veil. The shadow's eyes cleared from blood red to deep indigo, its form stabilizing, no longer twitching in pain. It hovered, assessing her with ancient intelligence. "No," it corrected, voice softening to a whisper wind. "I am free. The bonds twisted me, made me hunger. You stole my chains, thief. For that, I owe you a debt." Rumi stood, brushing off mist. "I was hired to steal you entire, to bind you anew." The shadow chuckled, the sound like distant waves. "Try if you wish, but I sense your heart. You steal to liberate, not to possess." It coiled around her, not attacking, but enveloping in a cool embrace. Visions flashed, Elyria's history, Claverley's infiltration, Lyra's secret meetings where she promised the bureaucrats control in exchange for power. "You're right," Rumi said. "Keep your freedom, but give me a fragment as proof." The shadow nodded, condensing a small orb of darkness from its essence, pulsing with power. "Take this. It holds my gratitude and a warning for your employer." Rumi pocketed the orb, its weight surprisingly light. Deal. But as she climbed the rope back to the surface, alarms wailed above, bells tolling, lanterns flaring red. The storm from the chamber spilled upward, fog storms raging across the city. Gondolas capsized in turbulent canals, spires swayed dangerously, vines snapping. "Lyra's doing?" Whisper asked. "Or Claverley's response to the unbound shadow," Rumi replied, emerging into chaos. People screamed, running for shelter as shadows danced wildly, freed from lesser bindings. Claverley inspectors swarmed the streets, wands drawn, shouting orders. "Contain the anomaly! Tax the storm!" Rumi raced through the mayhem, using the fog for cover. She headed to the whispering market, where crowds gathered amid the storm, vendors barricading stalls. Using the shadow orb, she projected illusions onto the cavern walls, visions of Lyra's betrayals, her meetings with Cleverly agents, her plot to unbind and destroy the Guardian for her own rule. The crowd gasped, murmurs turning to anger. "Traitor!" someone shouted. Lyra's guards, recognizable by their silk cloaks, tried to quell the mob, but were overwhelmed. Malik appeared from the shadows, weaving threads to bind the guards. "You did it, thief. The city owes you." "Not done yet," Rumi said. Lyra confronted her on the broken bridge, the storm raging around them, her veil torn away to reveal a face twisted in fury. "You ruined everything. The shadow was mine to control." "No," Rumi said, wind whipping her cloak. "It belongs to no one. You played both sides, Cleverly for power, me for the dirty work." Lyra lunged with a dagger of solidified illusion, sharp as steel. Rumi dodged, the blade slicing her sleeve. They fought on the swaying bridge, Lyra's attacks fueled by magic, blasts of wind, tendrils of fog. "You can't win," she snarled. "Elyria will fall without order." Rumi parried with the needle, piercing Lyra's illusions one by one. A final thrust shattered her dagger. Lyra stumbled, eyes wide, then fled into the fog, vanishing, perhaps escaped, perhaps claimed by the storm. The storm calmed as the shadow reformed above the city, its presence a protective shroud. Winds died, canals stilled, and the fog lifted to reveal stars.
Dawn broke over Elyria, the fog lifting like a curtain to reveal a city reborn. Spires gleamed in the sun, canals sparkled with clear water, and vines regrew stronger, pulsing with renewed magic. People emerged from shelters, marveling at the change. The air lighter, shadows dancing freely without malice. Malik found Rumi at the drowned clock tower, where the clock now ticked forward, water receding from its face. Kyle and Mira stood with him, the boy's eyes bright. "You did more than steal a shadow," Malik said, clasping her hand. "You liberated us all." The Cleverly inspectors fled in the night, their seals broken. Rumi shrugged, though a smile tugged at her lips. "I steal impossible things. Freedom's just another on the list. The shadow did the rest." He handed her a pouch heavy with crystallized illusions, gems that shifted colors, each worth a fortune in any market. "Your payment from the people." "And this," he added, a small shadow cloak, folded neatly, "for your next adventure." Kyle grinned. "Thanks for saving my sister. You're like a hero from stories." Rumi ruffled his hair. "Heroes get caught, thieves get away." As she boarded a gondola heading south toward new horizons, the wind whispered approval, carrying faint echoes of the shadow's gratitude. The moon rose early, following as always, or tracking, as Whisper claimed. "One heist at a time," she murmured, tossing Whisper in the air. He landed heads up. "Next stop somewhere dry, please." Rumi laughed, the sound echoing over the water as Elyria faded behind. But the adventure lingered, like a shadow unbound, hinting at greater threats, Cleverly's empire growing, more impossibles waiting to be stolen. The world was full of misplaced things, and Rumi Riddle was just getting started.